S.I.L.V.E.R, if you want to get us going. All right. Well, hopefully some others will join us as we get on with the show, so to speak. But good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Ask Me Anything about supporting individuals to live as vibrant elders in recovery, or as we lovingly refer to it as S.I.L.V.E.R with our acronyms. With our outstanding panel of experts, Dr. Leone, Lynn Legere, and Karen Gross, and we are excited to have them on here today. My name is Lisa Christinak, and I'll be your moderator. And today kind of started out a little rough, but that's okay. That's usually that's when great things happen, when we don't start out too good, right? We all have that at lived experience. And Amanda Lowe will be our wonderful tech support, which she does amazing work. So thank you, Amanda, for being with us today.
Thank you, Lisa.
Welcome. So today's event is funded by S.I.L.V.E.R, and if you didn't know what that means, it's the National Institute on Disability Independent Living and Rehabilitation Research. This webinar, as I'm going to remind you, is not a presentation, but rather an interactive question and answer period. So you get to be a part of the show. You are the main attraction today, is asking those questions that you need in your life, in your work, in your community. You've got the folks here today that can give you some great, not just wisdom, but lived experience around all of it. And so we're hoping that you can take something away today that can make things a little bit easier or better, or just get the education you need to start digging in deeper about this subject. The next hour, our panelists will respond to questions that you have related to the topic. And our topic is forging a resilient alliance to promote connectedness among older adults with a psychiatric disability. Our panelists have professional and/or personal experience with this topic. So for today, I'm going to introduce the panelists and give them a moment to expand some on our topic. Then we will take questions. Please put your questions in the chat. You can address them to the individual panelist or to the panelist, all of them as a whole. So if we're ready, let's get started, and welcome. So we're going to start with our first panelist. I'm going to give a brief introduction of each and give them a chance to kind of talk a minute about what our subject's about. So our first panelist is our expert on the aging subject matter. We have Dr. Laura Leone. She is a consultant for the National Council for Mental Wellness. She has worked in the behavioral and integrated health field, providing organizational leadership and direct services across the lifespan, including for older adults. Having published, trained, and consulted nationally, Dr. Leone has extensive subject matter expertise in health and wellness, including in aging and mental health challenges. So Dr. Leone, please take center stage and share your opening thoughts with us.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. And hello, everyone. So excited to be here with all of you. Connecting, right? We're talking about connectedness. And this is one way that we are all connecting across the world. We have people here from the UK. It's so exciting. So thank you for being here. To talk about connectedness, that sense of belonging, to be joined with people regardless of physical location, is to, I think, also talk about the opposite, which is loneliness. And loneliness, which sometimes can be confused with social isolation, can be two different things. So social isolation, just to kind of level set for a minute here, is the near absence or absence of being in physical proximity to another person. And in that absence of social interaction and social support structures, people can feel loneliness. Loneliness is something separate and different. It's definitely not the same thing. It is the possible response to isolation, But loneliness is really defined as a complex and unpleasant feeling of being empty, alone, lacking that belongingness, feeling unwanted, and craving human contact or that human connection, the connectedness aspect. And really, it is a subjective experience. And people feel loneliness, of course, sometimes when they're socially isolated, but often they could be surrounded by people and still feel a sense of loneliness. And so today, talking about connectedness is a part of that conversation is really addressing ongoing, pervasive, or persistent loneliness. We know that loneliness is as bad for you as actually smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's actually worse for humans than obesity. There are so many health risks that are associated. And then when you think about our individuals living with mental challenges, and already experiencing other problems, it really can exacerbate their health conditions overall, as well as shorten their lifespan. We know that there's lots of, unfortunately, negative consequences associated with a lack of connectedness. So part of the conversation today, and I'll very quickly turn it over to Lynn and Karen to also introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about that connection. Some of the sort of general thoughts and experiences are on how do we help build resiliency. And resiliency really can be about skills that we help people hone, build, and achieve and continue. And ways that we can enhance our protective factors, or ways that we mitigate or lower that risk of ongoing loneliness, and how we can enhance connection through building those skills, through things like volunteering and co-housing, self-compassion building, being able to think about even just how we regulate our emotional states. So there's lots of different ways that we can do that, and hopefully we'll get into some of those soon. I'll turn it back over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Laura. That was beautiful. Thank you. So let's go to our next panelist. This is Lynn Legere. She comes to share with us as a person with lived experience. So according to Lynn, she has lived a life in many chapters, and I have to agree. Those of us that know Lynn know that is so true. Her book would be 40 inches thick, including living as a mental patient and building a life in recovery. Now at 70, she is in a new chapter, navigating life that in part includes consequences of the past and recovery tools to thrive. So Miss Lynn, if you'll take center stage and share your opening thoughts with us.
I'd be glad to. Thank you. And thank you, Laura, as well. Some really thoughtful, meaningful words. That's what the center's work is all about, and what we're hoping to be doing with a lot of y'all out in the community. So I am very pleased to be here. As Lisa said in my bio, as a 70-year-old woman navigating this chapter of my life. And as a person who lived from 18 to 47 with the identity of a mental patient and experiencing utter devastating loneliness over those years, I see myself now, luckily, almost living life in reverse, in that it was terrible at the beginning and now it's getting better. The more I go, the better it gets. Which is really a wonderful thing. But nonetheless, this need for creating connection has still confronted me, as it does all of us at different points. For me, this was a particularly acute a number of years ago when there was this huge disruption of my entire social network due to an event. And I found myself with a close friend, but she lived about a half hour away, and we're both working, so we might see each other every week, every couple of weeks. And other than that, I was living alone in a new town and working alone from home. And so there really wasn't much in my life that brought people into my daily activities. And I realized as I was experiencing all this loneliness that I had to find a place to meet people. And so my first go-to, I think like many of us, was church. Okay, I'm going to go to church. And despite efforts of going week after week after week, whatever it was, the connection just didn't come. And so I felt like I was sort of left in a pickle, like, oh God, I've got to go out of the box and figure this out. And so knowing that it wasn't going to just fall in my lap, sadly, because that's really what I wanted. I wanted to sit in my living room and have connection somehow just magically come, but it wasn't going to happen that way. So I realized I had to sort of make a plan for myself that I could work through. And so I started by thinking about, the easiest part. What do I like, or what am I interested in? And I have to say, in a way, that's hard for me because I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. And I don't like the places where most people go to meet other people. So I had to think, like, what is this place going to look like for me? So it had to be somewhere that I was interested in. But I also had to look at what were the barriers and how could I get over those barriers? How could I find a way to work through barriers to someplace that I might want to go? And so this idea came to mind that my top interest in life is my dogs. Just is, they live with me, closest in my life. And so I started going to the dog park in my town. And one of the great things about this is it avoided the biggest barrier for me, which is opening the door to a room full of strangers. That, for me, is like the most intimidating thing in the world, which most people are surprised at. I don't come off like somebody who's scared to open that door, but I am. So I just had to go through a gate, and I saw what I was walking through before I had to go through it. So it eliminated my greatest barrier. So I started going to the dog park, but at first I sat on a bench where no one else was sitting, of course. And it took, a week or so until my brain said, Lynn, you're kind of defeating your own purpose by sitting away from the other people. Now I was loving the dogs, but I needed people too. So I started sitting nearer to other people. And then I noticed routines. Same people were coming at the same time every day. So I sort of modified myself to that so that I could start seeing familiar faces by coming at the same time like other people were. So I was starting to make inroads into saying hi to people because they were familiar now. And then I learned there was a Facebook page for the park. And when I went and looked at it, I saw that there were photos on that Facebook page. Well, my second love next to my dogs is photography. And so I decided I was going to start bringing my camera to the dog park. And so I brought a blanket so I could sit down on the ground near a bench with people, because I was working at this, right? So near a bench with people, but I sat on the ground where I could get good photos of the dogs. And then they started posting them on the Facebook page. And then what happened was people started to come up and thank me for the great photos I had taken of their dogs, because deep down, dog owners, our dogs are our kids. So it's the same way if somebody takes a really nice picture of your kid. So people started to come and thank me for the dog photos, and we'd end up in groups of 2 or 3, and conversations started. And then deeper conversations, and then meaningful conversations, and eventually friendships. What I didn't plan and never expected really was that the small effort of just going in and taking those photos started a community growing in the dog park. And not just for me, but for the other people there as well. That little act of getting myself out my own door and through that door and doing the photos changed the culture of that dog park. So much so that, in fact, which I think is a riot, the local TV station came. This is several years into this. And they did a story about it for the local TV. I got the CNN hero award for doing this. And I have a plaque now on one of the benches that says dedicated to Legere, the mayor of the dog park. So from lived experience, what I can say is that connection takes work to start. It's sort of like if you want to grow a plant, you got to go out and do the work of digging that hole and putting the seed into it. The upfront work had to come from me, and I had to walk through some of my fears as well as strategize. How could I set it up to involve the fewest amount of barriers that I could? But also, like that seed, once connection is planted, once it starts, it grows. And so that's what I want to share, is the work is hard, but it pays off tenfold. And now I have a whole community that I never expected. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Leon. It's a beautiful story, and I know so many of us can connect with so much of your story. So keep those questions coming. We're going to get right to them. Once we, oh, there it is.
There it is, my hero award.
She has proof. And we'll get to those questions in just a minute after we introduce our final panelist, Ms. Karen Gross. I'd like to present you. She comes to share her experience as a family member, a caregiver. She has been an advocate and caregiver for an older sibling who experiences severe mental health challenges. So Karen, if you will take center stage and share your opening thoughts with us.
Well, I just want to thank Lynn and Laura, and I just love Lynn's story of her connection, because I think that's what I'm trying to do with my family member, my older sibling, to provide him, to give him, to curate a healing recovery connection, because basically we're sort of isolated here on some property, and my folks were they were heroes. They were of trying to set him up so that he would be able to recover and not just be some kind of a babbit or a cog in an ugly system. They were very concerned about that for him. So so they got me on board after he came here from California, and they realized he had a mental illness, and they had him involuntarily committed, and they got him a diagnosis. They wanted him to have health care. They wanted him to have help because they couldn't do it all themselves. They couldn't do it all themselves. And he had been homeless for years. And basically his diagnosis is one that doesn't recognize, it's one of those that doesn't recognize they have a mental health issue. So I've known him all his life, right? So I know he's not violent. He can get very angry, but I've developed skills because I've to learn how to mitigate, how to walk away so that his anger doesn't get worse, because I'm a certified peer support specialist. So I know how to deal with his, and I think that he has some unusual things about his personality where he is solitary. I wouldn't say he's lonely, but he likes being solitary, but he is isolated socially. And it just and I've been caregiving with him for probably over 15 years. Dad died in 2014. So I've been very major then, but even before then, because Dad died, he was over at 100. So I had to take the reins there. So my question is, how do I bridge this gap with him? And part of the issue is that our system is it's clinically oriented, medical oriented. So it hasn't really been, if he's not going to step up, they're not going to step up unless it's a crisis. Now, given a little bit, it is changing. As of July 1st, there's going to be integrated health care. And we just had in North Carolina Medicaid expansion. So possibly I'll be able to have a friendlier, kindlier people come in. So, so they're not gonna, and be a little more gentle with him. And I did start to work on that earlier, but I had to stop. I don't do this full time. I mean, I have a life. I'm connected. I have to maintain my own wellness. So I will be trying to have them come in again. But at just the beginning of this, though, I was very well aware that they're going to blast him with all kinds of options. There's going to be too much on the table. He's not going to be able to comprehend. He's not going to be able to process. So I'm in a position where I have to work with them even before I get them over here. Can you do that? Can you just offer to give him this one thing? Don't be saying a lot of stuff. He'll get confused because at 72, he's also getting a little bit of a dementia. But at the same time, I've recognized that there is so much room there for his recovery. He has done things that surprise me all the time. I am not a total expert on, and I'm going to call him Al. I am not a total expert on Al. And I think there's plenty of room in there for him to have a higher quality life. But I am not very comfortable about the system and what the system may or may not do. Because the stories, the things I've heard, the reason my whole family was this way, I'm so protective of him, because we know that the system can make a situation if it doesn't work, and it's not helpful if it's not helpful. And I do not want to get in the middle of a situation like that and my caregiving role with my sibling.
Wow. Thank you, Karen. That's powerful. And I know that there's so many people out here right now that we know are caregivers and are putting out questions. So I can't wait to get to those questions. But it's encouraging. I love how passionate you are about him and being that advocate and just staying aware, but also doing that self-care for yourself, recognizing that there's many layers to your life, and it's not just this one thing, and how to integrate and how to take care of all the things. So you have your best life too. And so I know a lot of our caregivers and family members out there will be able to relate. So we'll get to those questions. But thank you, panelists, for giving us a little send off on what the topic is about and some of your experiences and expertise. So we're going to get to those questions because that's what we're here for, right? Just remember to keep them going. You can ask a particular panelist if you want to, or it can just be to any of the panelists. We also had put out there before with the registration that you could pre-submit questions, and we got some of those as well. And I want to make sure that that we get to those too. So, but let's get started with the questions. And so I'm just going to start at the first one. And Amanda, if you see that I have skipped any, please shoot me a message, because we have quite a few questions coming on board, and I'm not surprised. So we do have a question here. And it says, have you found enough or a dearth of social support, connections, resources for people who are more homebound? Something like turn a frown upside down. I know different areas will have different resources and availability, but curious about your experience around that. So this could be for any of you guys.
So I know that every state, has an organizational level of like the councils of aging and AAA, which I forget what that stands for. But again, it's a aging resource support kind of structure. And beyond that, it varies widely, not just state to state, but also community to community. If you're in a more rural community, chances are you have much less access to resources than if you're in an urban area. And I think what's hard is knowing even how to find out what the resources are in your area. And I think that's where either your council of aging or your AAA center might be a starting point to find out what else is in your area that's sort of on the map. I think there are other activities or centers or programs that may be run that aren't even sort of on the map of the state program. So sometimes it's also word of mouth, sadly, to find out what's around. I don't know if other people have more to add to that.
I would just piggyback for what you're saying, Lynn, that, you know, depending on the area and especially more rural or frontier communities, there are more concerns around what resources exist. So in a very short answer, I would say, no, there are not enough that exist.
Oh, no,
But to your other point, Lynn, I think there are great programs out there that need to be kind of utilized more frequently as well. So, and really thinking about how do we engage in alternative ways of connection? So more and more we are seeing the use of technology. We're seeing the use of connection through the virtual space, like we are all here today. Thinking about just how we see different kind of housing communities are being set up so that people who may be homebound still have shared spaces with other individuals and sort of co-housing. And I know we have somebody here from the UK. Co-housing is really big in the United Kingdom right now. So really thinking about just the ways that we push in to our homebound individuals has also, you know, we're seeing really great work across the nation and across the world, but more of it is needed for sure.
And I guess I'll just add a little bit because Laura and Lynn are talking about alternative ways of connecting. I'm very involved with the community inclusion, and that's a concept out of Temple University. Basically, it puts the onus on the community to be more accepting. You know what? Al is not going to be a rubber stamp of someone else, or he's not going to be in a silo with other silos. He's totally unique. Okay? Totally unique. Now, with all the stigma out there, he could be in danger at any time because he looks different, and people they have their rights violated all the time, where they get thrown in jail, and they're not criminals, but they have a mental illness, you know. And this is something we didn't want to happen to him, because of stigma. So this concept, I like this concept of community inclusion. I've actually done a few grants on it with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and SAMHSA, where you get the community, you pressure and push the community to be more accepting of different people. So you're not pathologizing everyone that is just so different from you. They're not sick. It's just that they're different colors of the rainbow, and let's bring them in. Let's not isolate them. Let's not stigmatize them.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Laura and Lynn. That was great. Thank you. Keep those questions coming. And if you guys out there that are watching have a particular resource or an experience around anything that's being asked, just throw it in the chat because everybody's watching it. We're not the total experts out there. You may have something that you want to share about that in the chats with someone. So we appreciate it.
And I just want to add one other thing on this is Karen's talking about the stigma, a lot of the prejudice and the discrimination that people may experience. And the work that we're trying to do at BU is dealing with folks who are getting older, who have had lifelong mental health. And so we're really talking about ageism as well as mental health discrimination and the interplay of those. There's a lot of efforts going around to have age-friendly communities, right? And it's talking about the physical environment and stuff that make it more usable by folks who are older. But underlying that, for the folks that we're really trying to support, is still that ongoing biggest of all stigmas, which is the mental health stigma. And so how do we help folks who are aging to also be overriding that. So we've got those two things. And how do we make life better and more accessible and more vibrant for people who may be having both of those coming on top of each other?
Yeah, thank
So.
you, Lynn. We do have someone, Beth, who is experiencing some housing things. And she has been living with a relative for a long, long time. But her question, I think, is I'd like to put it out there to you panelists. She experiences depression and doesn't know whether she might want to be out on her own or not. So I think, Lynn, you might be one to speak on this as well about your own lived experience and, when you make that decision, when it was time for you to live out on your own and what you went through and what your thought process on that.
Yeah, so number one, there's a shortage of housing. So across the board, this is a challenge for everyone. But choosing about where are my skill levels and where are the available resources in my community is a big part. Because when we're choosing to live independently, it means that we're doing everything by ourselves. That means, a lot of times you have to carry the groceries, you have to do all these things. So I think the biggest thing is knowing what your capacities are and what you expect them to be. I know it's a guessing game, but what you would anticipate they'd be over the next few years as part of that decision-making process of living totally by yourself, living with a roommate who's not family member versus living with family. I have a good friend, I tell her all the time, I'm gonna buy one of those tiny homes and park it in her backyard because that gives me the independence that I thrive on. I just get overwhelmed with people, but also the comfort of knowing that the support nearby. There's many a time when I've had physical stuff, especially with my back. I've had terrible back stuff, and I've had to use a skill that I think is harder than any other one, which is called asking for help. And so that's also part of the evaluation on that decision making. Can I ask for help? Because if we live by ourselves, you gotta do it. And it's so hard. So I think that answered the question. If I missed a piece, either Lisa or Amanda, let me know if there was another piece in there. But that's what I think about when I'm making that decision. What makes the most sense for who I am, where my strengths are, and the places that I just really suck at, because that has to be on the table as I'm making that decision.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. So Lynn, this is a question directed to you. Says, do you think that if you had had someone with you for extra social support, do you think that you would have still done all you have done with the dog park?
I don't know that I would have done well having that person around to offer social support. Like everything, we're multi-layered, and I needed that dose of humans in the flesh, because I get them on Zoom all the time, but I needed that dose of humans once a day, but limited, thank you. I choose to live alone because I get overwhelmed. My radar is always going unless I'm alone. So ironically, I think for some people, having that somebody coming by for that social support would work well. For others, not. And it depends on how long they want to hang around. Because I only need a small dose. I don't need big doses. My sister, on the other hand, cannot stay by herself for more than 10 minutes. She needs people. So it's also person dependent. But for me, that's how that would have gone down. Like, get the hell out of my space. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah.
Dr. Laura, I have a question for you. Some people have compared loneliness to trauma. Is there anything you could share about that?
Yeah, sure. So what's really interesting about what happens to our brain and our body with loneliness is that our body and our brain processes that as just the same way we process a traumatic event, adverse events, even chronic or toxic stress. Our brain reacts the same way. For years and years, and I mean years, our ancestors, like cavemen era, were hunters and gatherers. They realized that their protection, their safety was with and among being with people. And that sort of got ingrained into our bodies and the way that we function. And so when we are not regularly with people or connected to people, even if it's not in physical proximity, we actually sense, our brain is sensing that as a safety concern. And in microseconds, our brain is constantly, and it's actually happening in sort of the lower part of our brain and our brain stem, is constantly assessing whether or not we're safe. And safety isn't just about physical safety. It's psychological or emotional safety. It's moral safety, intellectual safety. Like there's many kinds of safety. But when we are consistently lonely, and I'm not talking about fleeting loneliness, but that consistent lack of connectedness, that consistent feeling of loneliness, whether we have people surrounding us or not, our brain is actually interpreting that as the same way as a trauma. And we actually go into a fight, flight, or freeze response mode. For any of you that might remember this from like high school biology, right? We are sort of programmed, innately programmed to either fight, and this might be a sense of defensiveness, and might not actually be physical fighting, or fleeing, which might also mean kind of stopping or being numb or running away or distracting, or freezing and kind of shutting down. And this response mode, we get stuck in this response mode when we are experiencing that pieces of loneliness. And so then our brain, meanwhile, and when we're stuck in our lower brain, it's not optimally using and moving on to our other levels of our brain. Our middle of our brain is our limbic system. It helps with memory and memory making and connecting emotionally. The higher level of our brain, our cortex, our prefrontal cortex, is sort of about executive functioning, reasoning, learning, processing. We can't learn or process. We can't function at our best. And we can't kind of connect it, like our memories are not functioning the best way they can be, and our feelings are not being expressed in the best way if we are stuck in an area of not feeling safe. And that is actually what's happening for people when this is occurring. And that actually leads to a whole host of other concerns, which is that other things are happening in our body. We are increasing cortisol levels, we're increasing adrenaline levels. We're not functioning in the same way. Our cells are becoming inflamed and staying inflamed. And this leads to other health concerns, emotionally and physically, that lead to some of the other problems that we see connected to experiences of ongoing loneliness. And so again, this phenomenon of what's happening in that fight, flight, and freeze response mode is what happens to us in experiences of trauma or ongoing trauma, even if that trauma happened in the past. And it's also what we experience when we're going through ongoing heightened levels of stress. Same kind of response. Thanks for that question.
Yes, that's good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Karen, I have a question for you. What have you learned from being a caregiver or a family member of a sibling with mental health challenges that would encourage those of us that are in the same situation?
Well, I think it can be very helpful if you decide to take the high ground. And what I meant by that, I was sort of able to anticipate that I would be his caregiver. And I heard that I could get something called a special needs trust. I didn't want to take away his human rights and get guardianship. And I'm so glad we didn't do that, because I've heard some pretty some people have pretty negative experiences with guardianship, and it takes away a person's rights. So we got to do the special needs trust, and that protected him where he just his basics, nuts and bolts, housing, his benefits, you know, that protected him so that so that those just wouldn't be ripped away from him. So that it has given me a source of security of that I've done whatever I could do, which to me, from my perspective, is the best that I could do. There's a lot more that needs to be done. But taking the high road is one of them. And then and that was quite an experience. I just want to say, you know, talking to an attorney, one of the top ethical attorneys in the state, getting them to draft this up. I'd never done anything like that before. And then not giving up on him and understanding that the changes in his life can come very small and incremental, but he does have capabilities. You know, which surprised me sometime. While it's very discouraging to be a part of, see how he has given up, which in my opinion, he has. And I think if you met him, you would say, oh, well, he has given up. But at the same time, he's got some aspects of him which have a lot of vitality and interest. And it's important for me as a caregiver to try to pull those out and encourage those in him, the good in him. And that always gives me hope that there will be a window of opportunity for his recovery that I cannot now anticipate. I am not all knowing, and I'm not going to be all judging of him. So I think there could be a moment in time where I'm going to see some strides if I don't give up. And but I want to be careful because those have to be the strides he wants to take, because it's him. But I can help him, and I'm right there, and he trusts me 100%, and I value that trust, and I don't want to break it. I think it's so important.
Thank you, Karen. Great answer. I do have a question that was sent beforehand. I want to make sure we get out there. This question is from Shannon, and Shannon says, my dad is 95 and still lives independently and drives. My mother, who was much younger, at 81, passed away 3 years ago. They had a busy social life, but my mother was the planner. Since she has passed, my father has attempted several times to go to social events or play sports as they did before, but he always has some reason that it's awful and puts more pressure on me to be his social outlet. It can be draining. He has more anxiety and depression when he isn't socializing, but I cannot seem to help him find more activities that he can enjoy. How can I support him to find new activities and also keep my self-care at a pace of wellness?
That's a biggie.
Mm-hmm.
I have a suggestion. You know, there's the senior center. It's here in my area. It's the Council on Aging. You could have volunteers come in and visit with them. It might be too many people, might be too much activity. It just might be too overwhelming. I mean, I think some of us in recovery could understand that. So maybe you could have someone come to visit him, and they'd be screened, and they would have gone through some training. And there's a lot of people who do that through the senior center. I come in and just visit with him once a week or once a month. And then also through the libraries, there are people that will come in and read. Maybe there's a good book he'd like to enjoy. So someone could come in and read. So my suggestion overall is to just tone down the socializing. It doesn't have to be like a big group. It can be a smaller group, or it can be one individual that has a little bit of training that can offer him some relief from the loneliness.
I like that. I like that. Laura, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was. It was actually reminding me of some of what Lynn shared, and I think speaks to what you were just speaking about, Karen, which is sort of the idea of behavioral activation, which is to do things that we find or we hope to find pleasurable. So pleasurable activities, or they can be activities of mastery, things that we can do that we can get a sense of accomplishment from. And leaning into your father. And I think actually this question is great because there are some other questions similar in the chat around just sort of what's like a starting point for people. And I do think leaning into your interests, pleasures, or something that you want to achieve or accomplish, but ideally that where there are other people around, or that there's possibility to connect with others, even if you don't. Kind of forcing yourself to do those a little bit, almost like homework, right? Putting yourself out there. Lynn did that with walking the dog. The dog had to get walked, like she loves her dog. Being able to go to the dog park and then sitting there, and maybe Lynn, you didn't feel like sitting there that first time or really being with people, right? But kind of making homework for yourself to do that and to be in that space, leaning into the love for photography. So with this question, really thinking about, what does your father love to do? What might he want to try to do? Less about the intensity of being around the other people. Don't focus on what's like internal to him of interest or of want. And then hopefully it's something that can connect, and that there might be people around that with like-minded or other similar interests, there's a potential for building connection that way.
And I want to add on, and this again from the current question, and then some of the others that have come up. As a supporter, it's always hard because we put ourselves in our own space into other people. So why isn't he activating this himself? Why isn't he saying he wants to go do all of this stuff of what we project on people that we would want to do if we were in their situation? And so as a supporter, I think there's two sides of the same coin. One side is just listening, and this goes to what Laura was saying. What's interesting to you? What kind of things would you like to do? And then really hear it. And then stop. That's the other side of not you should, why don't you, all that stuff. Just accept that if they're not doing it, maybe it's because they don't want to. Maybe it's as simple as that. They're not going someplace on their own because they don't want to go. And that's the listening again, saying, is this something I'm noticing you're not going? Is it something that you're not interested in? Or Karen, I think of this with your brother so often, is he really lonely because he spends a lot of time alone? Or is that something he actually prefers to do, and having that conversation, right? Because as a supporter, knowing where those lines are between support and pressure, it can be really wobbly lines, right? It's hard to know when I'm supporting someone. How do I know how to support them, but not be pushing my own agenda on them of what they should want, what they should be doing, what's good for them, and giving them that autonomy, maybe just to say, I don't know. Say, okay, well, maybe we'll explore and experiment and find out. That's okay. You don't have to know. But giving the person really room to explore their wants and needs, rather than thinking that just because we would want and need something in that situation, that's what they want and need too, right? So it's hard enough to figure ourselves out, but then being supportive of someone else just ups the ante of challenge that goes with it, right? So, go ahead, Pam.
Expound on my experience of that. I think it's such a great topic, and you made so many good points, both of you. I think Laura talked about, the phrase was used, forcing good behaviors, and I put down encouraging good behaviors, okay? Because like for my sibling, Al, there's things he likes to do. One thing he loves to do is when I take him out to eat. And particularly, I'll take him out to breakfast. Now, I don't do that enough. I might do that 4 times a year. If I had the support from the system for him, if he would agree it, he could go out every week probably, with someone and have breakfast. And he just likes to sit there and eat, but he likes the companionship and he likes certain restaurants, So that is an activity he really enjoys, and it only involves a little bit of talking, but he loves the eating. Now, when I said encourage good behaviors, because sometime in a case of my sibling Al, it's what is good for the community, not just for my sibling. I'll give you an example of that. When my mother was passing, he didn't want to go see her. She passed at home, and I told him, and he didn't want to come over. And so we would just continue to go into town once a week for his town run. And then I realized, because I was grieving, I realized he's not bringing his garbage over. He had stopped bringing his garbage. So I went over to look, and here I found just about all of his cabin had been thrown out in the back of the house down the ravine. I was absolutely horrified. And I had to, I called someone on the phone. I said, what's going on? And the person said it was a counselor, and said, well, different people have different ways of grieving. So what I had to try to do, and this was very simple. First of all, I wanted to get all that cleaned up. That was number one, and that became a big thing. But number two, I wanted to get him to change his behavior. I wanted to get him to bring his sacked garbage over to the car so we could take it to the dump before we went into the town. And I had to really work on him with that. I mean, little by little, you got it. And I say, bring your garbage. We'd be ready to go get your garbage. I really, really had to work on him to do that. And by golly, I did succeed. And so, because I did it with a lot of persistence, but a lot of kindness. And I didn't, but he can be very, very stubborn and determined. So that is very frustrating part of the caregiving that I have. Well, he'll get this thing in his head and he's not going to change it. And there's a bunch of stuff like that. And I'd really like some help with that, because some of that, as in the case of the garbage, can become extremely dysfunctional. And that's not just his dysfunction. It becomes a problem for let's say the community, because you have to deal with it.
Thank you, Karen. And
I do want to say, when I was talking about forcing, it's maybe forcing oneself, but it's never about forcing another person. Yeah, for sure. Karen, good call out we want to encourage others and be there and supportive, but it's definitely not about force, because force is met with defensiveness and more force.
Absolutely. And just recognizing that was some grief, that behavior was a cry, sort of what the loss he was feeling. And I'm glad that you were able to get that information, because, you may not ever thought about that, because you were in your own, right? So I think that was great stuff there. Absolutely. Wow, we're getting to the close. I know we've had a lot going on in the chat, and you guys have been great about putting resources out there for others that have asked for them, or things that you've used. We will send those out. Once this is over, we'll collect all of those and we will send it out to you guys. So if there was something that you didn't see or didn't get quite jotted down, we will do that, because I know a lot was coming out. Any questions that I missed? It seemed like there was a lot going on in the chats with each other, and I tried to catch them all. Laura did a great job of kind of taking a few that she saw and go ahead and put it out there. But
I tried to answer a few too. Yeah.
There's a lot.
Questions.
Yeah, there's a lot. I guess, Lynn, the only question that came to us, I want to make sure I get those people that sent beforehand, was talking about the difference, and you even mentioned consequences in your bio. And this question was pertaining to the difference in someone who is just aging versus someone who has had a lifelong mental illness, a struggle or challenge. So can you just quickly answer that question for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the struggle with mental health and aging is that, first of all, none of our systems are integrated, and that different things that are going on in our body as we age impact our mental health. And depending on if a person is in recovery or how much exposure they've had to recovery, how much support from a recovering community they have now, really matters as you're going into this aging process, bringing in new systems. You're leaving, not leaving, but you're adding on this whole system of care that's not what you're used to, with new people, with new stigmas against you because you have mental illness, and you're coming to them for a comorbid thing. And for a lot of us, experiencing things younger than other people might have because of the medication that we were on for years and so forth. And so getting that support around aging ultimately helps us age more gracefully with our mental health challenges, because you got to keep doing the recovery work, but sometimes you got to do it a little stronger now because there's other things coming up. So it just, I think it's a time of wonderful opportunities, especially if we're in recovery, to enjoy life that we may not have ever expected, which is wonderful. And maybe if we're in recovery, we have more tools to deal with some of the aging issues. For people who are still struggling, I think it's much more challenging because now you've got two systems to navigate, two funding sources to try to, there's just, it's like double duty now. And so it's more challenging, but I'm hoping that our work and the work that other people are starting to do, that we also will have more supports, tools, resources in place so that it doesn't become double duty, because primary duty is enough, thank you. We don't need to add on and have double duty. And I think that's what we'll see over the next coming years. I think there's a real national effort to try to impact this particular group of folks like me who are now getting older but have had lifelong challenges with mental health. And how do we not let that derail graceful aging or vibrant aging? So
yeah. Well, Amanda, if you could put up the slide about Laura's training that she's doing. There is going to be another training. I can't remember what it was called, Laura. If you want to, while Amanda's going to put up that slide, and I'm sure Amanda will also send this out in the resources so you guys can have it. So Laura, if you'll take a quick minute to tell us what this is about.
Yeah, I'd love to. So for those of you who are interested, next week on March 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern, I will be providing a paid training on, if you're interested in that mind-body connection that I was talking about. This is all about mind-body responses to chronic loneliness, and really getting in a little bit more deeper into sort of the science and the biology aspects of what we're experiencing with chronic or pervasive loneliness. So if you're interested in registering for that, I have put a link in the chat. You can go ahead and click and check that out. I'm hoping that you'll come join me again. Thank you.
Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. We're at the end, and it is time to go. But when you say bye to us, you'll see a survey that'll pop up. Please take 30 seconds. Is all it's going to take. It's really important for us to get the feedback. It's really important to our funders. And so please, please, please take a few seconds to do that. And Lynn, you're on mute. Of course you are. Thank you,
we
guys.
don't want Nidler mad at us, so please.
Yeah, Absolutely.
I just want to
I'll
say
fill it
the
out.
survey will be sent as well in a follow-up email that you will get on Monday or Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that if you miss it at the end.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thank
Amanda.
you, everyone. This was lovely.
Thank you.
And nice to see some familiar names, and I can't say faces, but names in the chat box. Thanks for coming, and I hope you all have a great day.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.